Rocking Chair Session. With Elisa Di Battista and Maria Teresa Barber.
Hi everyone, and welcome to Rocking Chair Sessions. This is Maria Teresa Barbers
and Elisa Di Battista,
and we are the hosts of the show. And this is a little intro to Rocking Chair Sessions. So, Rocking Chair Sessions is a live podcast where we invite artists to talk about their life and their art, and it is a hybrid of a psychotherapy session and an artist interview. And as the name, of course, says, our artist is sitting in a rocking chair, rocking away. And for volume 1, we actually invited Jenna Efrein, artist Jenna Efrein, to join us. So welcome, Jenna.
Welcome, Jenna. Thank you.
We're so excited you're here. We're so excited you're here. And Jenna, we have to say that Jenna actually brought a red nose, a clown nose.
About a cloud nose, which does affect my voice.
Which we love.
And we'll hopefully be photographing her when our session ends.
Definitely, for the cover of the podcast.
For the cover of the podcast.
Mm-hmm, yeah. Mm-hmm. Wonderful.
Let's jump in.
Let's get started. So we're gonna talk about your life and the art as well, and I think we wanted to start with a little bit an open question about how you would describe yourself as a person to someone that doesn't know you at all, like our listeners. What would you say?
I'm a human.
Very good. Very good information.
And a member of your community.
Okay.
I think.
What is your community?
My community is where my feet are planted, where I hang my hat. I'd like to think that my community isn't just where I happen to live, but it's wherever I happen to be. So I like to continue with that sense of belonging, no matter where I am, because I'm a human within this world, and why should I behave or function any differently whether I'm in the town where I have my residence or not.
Mm-hmm. With that description of being a human and where you belong, could you tell us a little bit more about your background, as in like where you were born and where you grew up?
As a human.
As a human. As a human. I know that does sound a little odd, doesn't it?
No, I love it. I would say that I would say that myself too.
And there's a very distinct difference between being a human and being an animal, or like even a domesticated animal or a non-domesticated animal or a feral animal. I mean, those are all really distinct differences
and experiences.
And social constructs.
Yeah.
Right. And the ability to move distances. Unless I happen to be a monarch butterfly, but then of course my life is incredibly short. So, since I'm a human, so it's really, I think it's actually a very, when you look at all the definitions of what that means, it's pretty distinctive and accurate, and it has weight, right? Gravity has meaning.
Yeah.
So, I forgot what you asked me before.
As a human, where were you born?
I grew up in Brooklyn, New York. I was actually born in Cortland. I grew up as a welfare baby, so my parents were living with my dad's parents in Peekskill, New York. Mm-hmm. And so I was born in Cortland. That was where the hospital was. And then we went to actually Orlando, Florida.
Really?
For 3 years. And I do have memories from that, almost drowning and swinging a swing, and selling a guitar that I had great attachment to in a garage sale when we were moving to Brooklyn when I was 3, and I was very angry about that. I guess I was angry about change. Which is interesting now because I really embrace change, whereas I grew up fighting it and fearing it. And now I think it's an awesome wonder. Anything is possible. I mean, that's like kind of a motto. I should probably have that tattooed on my body, like anything is possible.
Anything is possible.
Yeah. I actually listened to a webinar yesterday, and I sat there after the webinar, and I felt like the walls in the world just got so much bigger. And I was like, I could really just dream big and make it happen. Because why not? Why not? Right?
That was a good webinar.
It was amazing.
Yeah.
It was amazing. And so, and I enrolled in the course. I'm really pumped about it.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Very cool.
So,
From Orlando, you moved back to Brooklyn.
I moved to Brooklyn.
So what
and
experience as a child do you feel really impacted you?
As an artist,
as an
yeah.
artist.
What, so you said the experience of having to move was really like you experienced it as negative as a child, but then
spirit is negative.
now it's actually kind of like a mantra almost, or it's like kind of like that you embracing it.
I don't fear it, and I like to stay open to the possibility. I mean, I've actually been questioning it a lot lately because, you know, I'm a full-time faculty member, but I'm not tenure track. And I'm like, well, if I want to be tenure track, we're probably going to have to leave Miami, right? Because there really isn't options locally for that. But at the same time, I've been living here. I've never been happier in my life.
How long have you been living here?
3 years.
3 years.
So, and I've moved here and I've made an abundance of friends, you know, in and outside of the art community. I've just, my own artistic practice has never flowed so well and felt like also on fire and with such growth potential and clarity and focus within my own work. Because before I had so many diverse interests, and I still do, but they were kind of like really disparate and all over the place, and they've really honed in together in a way that feels very true. So that's actually fantastic. And so I've been considering like alternative paths to profession, to stay where my soul is soaring, right? So, and like, what is the most important thing to know and experience and be, and like, is it like to have this idea of what my career path is and just like blindly run
what would
towards
those
it,
goals be?
you know, or like maybe change, maybe like let go of that ego that says that you must be tenure track because, you know, and full professor, and, you know, it's like I can still have all those experiences, all that knowledge, all that growth. Do I have to have the title? Right? Is that relevant? I know that I chose that particular career path for a whole host of reasons, but many of those reasons, which are the most important, I can gain additionally in other ways. And part of it was I wanted to be constantly involved with an artistic, creative, problem-solving, thinking, challenging community. And I can have that outside. I've actually found a community of artists here in Miami that I can do that with. I don't always have to be necessarily institutionally bound, because I found people who are questioning, who are pushing, who are trying to figure out new things. I have different experiences from a lot of people that I've met that are curious about it. They have experiences that I haven't done that I'm curious about. So there's a really interesting give and take and collaborative kind of, you know, process that can happen.
When did you decide to become a teacher?
Well, like to become like a college professor?
Yeah.
When I was like 32, 33, something like that.
Was that after grad school or?
No, I hadn't gone to grad school.
Before grad school?
Yeah, I made the decision before going to grad school. I mean, it was one of the reasons. I graduated college, and then I lived in a house in upstate New York with like a boyfriend, and I had a variety of friends that lived with me, you know, and he and I for like periods of time, other creative people. So I was living out there for a really long time, and I was making art, and I started doing craft shows with stained glass, and then I started doing kiln fired fused and slumped glass. I did a lot of commissions. I did commissions like in upstate New York, but I did a lot of shows, and I did a lot of commissions in New York City. So I do bay windows or clear story windows. I did weird windows in people's closets or privacy windows between a house and another house, so you don't have to look at their gas tanks. Or I did a large window that went out to LA to a really big house out there. So, expanded. And so I did that for a long time. And with custom work, I started to develop my own aesthetic and my own voice and my own interest, because every time someone wanted something done, I would have to do research into the subject of what it was. And so I started to learn a lot of different things. And in developing my own aesthetic, I started to really start to have a desire to create my own bodies of work, my own bodies and my own avenues of research, instead of always being directed research-wise by these custom jobs, which was really quite fantastic, because I learned about such a whole host of things. Did you know that submarines were modeled after tuna fish? Because tuna never stop swimming, and their mouths are always open. If they do, they sink.
You learned that at a commission?
I learned that from a commission for a stained glass window. Yeah, so it was like really strange stuff.
So you basically, spend your time really working with your medium, which is glass mainly, right?
Mainly, yeah, but I use a lot of other materials, and I love wood. I've always used wood. I like a lot, because sometimes with the stained glass stuff, I'd have to make the frames.
That's true.
So I would have to make the custom frames, or I have to frame things in. And then also like if it's a historical, I have to make it like easily removable. It can be permanent. So those are things to consider. But I started developing my own concepts, and I was running this business, right? Very badly. Really, really badly, right? So I really wasn't making money, and I kind of hit a wall. I hit an emotional wall. There's a lot of things in my life that were not working. So I hit like this sort of soul-sucking black void precipice on which I was standing, and suddenly extremely aware that I was at this edge, and I didn't know really what to do. And I heard somebody, I was like with this group of people, and I heard this guy who was older than me, and he was like, I went back to school and I did it right this time. And then I was longingly looking at my neighbor's house across the street, and they all the lights were lit up, and they had a family, and I just saw I had this imagination of this warmth and loving and the sense of home life, and I'm sure they were all over there pulling each other's hair out and screaming and yelling.
Probably now
lovingly somehow.
I knew that I did a lot of babysitting for those boys. They were a trial. They were wonderful. I love them, but I'm sure it wasn't all my little fantasy. But I turned to my boyfriend and I was like, I want that. And he said, how are you going to afford that? Right? And I didn't really listen to his words very carefully, but because he said, how are you going to afford that? So it's very specific language. I just put my brain to work, and I was like, oh, well, and I heard this guy about going back to school. It's I could go back to school. I go to grad school. I'd be always, and I could I'd go to grad school. Not only I used to think grad school was history and studio practice, and I was like, I can study history, and I have a studio, so why would I do that? And then I was really I really like to teach. I really like the idea of being in an educational environment where I'm constantly having to problem solve with my students. They have ideas. I have to figure out creative ways to get them there, and then explain it to them. So there's always these new things. There's new technologies that you have to keep up on to be able to teach them. That also expands all the possibilities for my own work, right? And then I really like the idea of getting to meet and working with my colleagues, right? And colleagues in different areas of expertise and how we might potentially collaborate on something. Being a part of a school, because then I'm I did a project once where I needed a microbiologist, an incubator, and agar dishes and hermetic swabs, and I worked with this microbiologist and let me grow these cheek swabs on these petri dishes, and so and that was a really interesting, which would have been I could have still done, but it's I could have probably gone to any school that had a microbiologist and done that, but it was a lot easier because you were in
this institution.
So So,
So that was 32, kind of. You hit a wall. You were like ran out of money, or you were not getting that.
I made like $9,000 one year. Like I would
Yeah.
just like break even on stuff. I didn't have a lot of things going on for me back then. Business savvy, self-esteem, blah blah. There's a lot of things that were kind of in the toilet.
So that was like the idea to go back to school and teach and have a
Yeah.
regular income, and then also go to grad school afterwards, right?
Well, I was like, we have to get the graduate degree to teach at the university. And so I was like, well, I'm going to do that. And I just like the idea of like, well, if I'm going to go into a certain profession, there's salary standards that are already established. So I don't have to like go and be like, no, you really should like,
Pay me this or that.
Yeah, exactly. And then when you're an artist, I mean, people haggle you all the time, and I actually find it so insulting.
Super offensive.
You know, it's super offensive. It's hard enough, like so many times, for us to ask for what we feel like something is worth or that we need to get, and have someone be like, well, how about, and then like they lowball you to something where it's like, do you have any idea how much my materials cost? How many hours it took me to make this, right? And it's not like it just poof popped into my head, but there's all this research, and there's like my own creative aesthetic that I've like honed and developed, my ability to compose, you know, put things together in a way that makes sense. And that's not only like education, but it's practice, right? So people really devalue, I feel, the artists, and honestly I think artists are the most valuable people within human society, and we design and influence every living, breathing, waking moment of every single person. Nobody's walking around naked aimlessly in the desert. I mean, they might be, but it's a bad experience generally.
We won't disagree with that. For
I
sure.
love that picture. Walking
Of the
in the
hermit.
desert naked. Okay.
Because if you're wearing clothes, somebody designed that.
Yes.
You know,
true.
it's like if you're walking in a building, somebody thought about how you were to pass through that space. In what order do you experience the rooms? How big is the bathroom? Right? What is necessary? How wide is the hallway? You know,
Everything.
So everything, the car you drive, like, you know, for anyone that devalues the arts, they should just go walk in the desert naked. You know.
Okay, well, I guess you were describing some of your attempts as an artist in terms of learning how to more or less find yourself with your practice, with learning different techniques through the making of these commissions. I guess the question that I was interested in is, as an artist, from these attempts, what would you say was your biggest failure?
My biggest failure as an artist?
Or it could be a piece if you want,
Biggest failure?
if there is such a thing. Maybe all your pieces have been
like,
successes.
I don't even think any of them, even if something didn't work out as I intended, I don't think that's a failure. That's a learning opportunity.
Agreed.
So I don't actually, I mean, you can definitely have things that are unplanned are gone like horribly wrong, but sometimes it's really funny, and it's worth its weight in gold, because I'll be driving along and just bursts out into uncontrollable laughter. But I've been known to laugh about a falling piece of paper, and that was pretty much all that happened. Was a piece of paper fell on the floor, and like glances were exchanged. So
then, what would you say then in terms of not failure? Like, how would you describe success then?
how would I describe success? That is a hard one because I'm trying to figure out how to phrase it. Because I wouldn't say, like, on one side, it's like, oh, is selling my work success? I'm like, yeah, sure, that's a form of success, and that always feels good, but it's not like, but if I'm to take all the things that I think are successful, how do I reduce it? That's not the word I want, but like, how do I bring it, synthesize it to its essence? So because I think like getting a show and like having a solo show or even being a part of some group shows, those are successes. Now I was in a group show Mocha last year and I didn't sell anything. To me that was a monumental success. I was super honored. I was tremendously excited, and I felt utterly awkward at the opening. I didn't know what to do with myself at all. It was a really strange experience.
Which is so hard as an artist. I wanna just share this one too, because we were in the same show, and it's like you're supposed to be happy because you got into this show. It's a success, right? And then I was so miserable at the opening because I was so nervous and I was like so overwhelmed with it, and I was like, and it's really hard sometimes, you know, that you're supposed to be happy because you're successful. You got into this show, and then you feel really bad with it.
And I left that show, and I I wasn't hanging out with anyone afterwards, and I was like, I feel like I should have a celebratory dinner. Oh, by myself. Like I felt miserable afterwards. It was terrible. I got some Thai food that I took home that actually ended up being bad because I randomly chose a place. It was not even good, and I was just like, and I overate, and I felt gross, and then it was terrible.
Yeah.
But so I looked.
But it was still success.
It was still success. Like,
but you were miserable.
And then actually I looked at the piece afterwards and I was like, why did I put that thing there that looks terrible, right? You know, but is that a failure? It's not, because I learned I'll never do that again. So I don't think it's a failure, you know? It's like, it's interesting. So like, I think to me, success, the question is, what do I think is success?
Like, what would you consider success to be? Yeah.
I consider success to be any opportunity that allows me to share and create understanding, empathy, and connection between myself, the object I've made, and the viewer. That is how I define success.
So empathy.
Empathy, understanding. Because as hokey as it sounds, like my goal is to create world peace.
That is true. I remember you saying that.
Yeah, and I mean that super sincerely. But like, can I affect world peace globally? No. Community, as a human, a member of your community, wherever I am is the community I'm participating in? Yes, I can. One person at a time.
We were talking about your interest in nature, specifically in the Everglades, but also the preservation of nature. And when did that start? Like you said you were in Orlando as a kid, but then you moved back north. And kind of when in your development did that start? When in your personal development?
So because I grew up in Brooklyn, and I grew up as like a total street rat kid, and I hated bathing or brushing my hair. Any of that stuff was like a real forced event, bathing and hair brushing. Total tomboy, and was perfectly happy being totally filthy. So it makes sense that I'm a sculptor. And then I work in. Why it doesn't bother me to have a studio outside in Florida where I sweat profusely, and then I'm often doing things that are very dusty, dirty, smelly, and loud. And or if I'm blowing glass, I'm just sweating my face off. I'm like, yep, sure, totally comfortable with this. You know, it doesn't really, I don't know. It's all kind of funny, I guess. So I was thinking a lot about, and then so I grew up there, and then like I went to college. I went to 2 colleges for college, and the first one I went to was in Vermont. And I'd spent some time in upstate New York, so I'd been in the country. Vermont is like totally different than where I had spent like time in the Catskills as a kid. And so Vermont is like a Renaissance painting everywhere you go. And I just was waiting to like hit the canvas. And so it was like kind of amazing and sort of blew my mind. I had a friend of mine, we used to get into his car and we would just like pick a direction and drive. We would just like, let's go this way, you know? So like, and no maps. I don't really know how we got back to, because this was before cell phones, so I really don't know how we got back, but we did. I think we mostly stayed sort of straight, but in one direction. I don't know, I wasn't driving, but so and then I went to the Evergreen State College in Washington State. So I went to Bennington College of Vermont my first years, and Evergreen State College my last years. And Evergreen, wow, like out in Washington State, like gorgeous, right? So And so I started to, and I drove cross country, and I started to do some like walking in the woods, adventuring, especially out in the West Coast, and starting to get like, learn about trails and get comfortable with doing that kind of thing. And, usually I did it by myself. Sometimes I would do it. I spent a bunch of time in Hawaii too, and I would go on like big hike and camp trips with friends there, actually. So that's where like I started to really get into nature. And then living in the Catskills for 15 years, I lived in like a valley looking at the Shawangunk mountain range right outside my living room windows, and like I lived maybe 5-10 minutes from town, like 10 minutes from town drive. And there was a post office and a general store down the street. I like lived in the middle of nowhere. There was a stream down that street. Like, it was beautiful. Totally loved it.
So the city kid completely went out into the countryside.
Yeah. And then I reached a point where I was like, I know if I want my career to grow, I really can't stay living in the boonies in the middle of nowhere. So a whole bunch of shifts happened. So I went to grad school at Alfred University in Western New York, and then I got a job like spring semester, my first year of grad school, I think it was. I had a job waiting for me in Philadelphia.
So you went to Philadelphia?
I went to Philadelphia after grad school, and then I moved here.
From Philly?
Yeah, 5 years later. But, so I was thinking about this the other night, because I did like a little presentation of my work, and I was thinking about how I presented it, and the thing that I used to say, like my sort of elevator pitch is, my work is, what does what I feel like look like, and how can I create a surrogate object that will get the viewer to feel how I feel, or to understand my feeling within their own body, thus connecting us through this object and hopefully engendering a sense of empathy and understanding, so that we're connected, but then maybe they walk out and they might be a little kinder to the next person that they meet. So that's a way of creating world peace, right? Sort of that pay it for the butterfly effect, right? So then I came here to Florida, and I wanted to get out in nature, and the only thing that seemed really obvious to me in the whole concept of like alligators was like, I gotta go to the Everglades, right? So like I went out there. Stunning, beautiful, absolutely gorgeous. The way the wind moves through the sloughs, the sound is just breathtaking, right? Really, really beautiful. And the colors and the color shifting and the time of year, it's just, there's so much going on. And
it's so close to the city. Like it's so close. And you would not think when you're in the city that a place like that could possibly exist.
It's your city meets nature.
Yeah. So it's amazing. And then by going out there and just through, I don't know if it was just being out there and listening to the rangers, or just like starting to do, even like when I'm listening to like NPR, like actually listening to the radio, and then having been there, like the stories that are on the radio, I'm like, oh, this is an issue. And then I just do a tiny little bit of research, and like I discover all these different, associations and organizations, and start to see, articles in the paper, and it became really obvious, like the issues. And right before I came down here, while I was still in Philly, I started experimenting with fusing, slumping, and casting with bottle glass. I was kind of curious about doing that because art glass is like really expensive, and I thought, well, let me try this like material which is readily available and free, and so let me see what I can do with this. And so I started experimenting with it, and having varying degrees of success, and so problem solving, some technical stuff. And then I came down here and I really started to expand on that, and I just between like it, I can't even put a particular finger on it, but the way I look at it is thus. So like initially it was about me and connecting to other people, but now it's me connecting to other people and to our environment, to the community and the actual site that we are in, and then thinking about, we are in this site, and what we do here affects what happens downriver, and we need to be conscientious of that, right? We need to be aware. So like when they're in Pittsburgh and they're burning all this steel, and then they have acid rain up north, like it's a direct correlation, right? So you need to think about like those kinds of things. We don't live in a bubble. Like it's 2017, like we're global. Like what we do, and it's not, and we're aware of it. Like we have communication abilities to know that, like, oh, the stuff that we dumped in the river up here, like, killed all the fish down there, and none of those people have no, economy.
Yeah.
Right? And they have no way to make a living because we just spoiled their, like, moneymaker.
Yeah.
So, I think that that's really important. I think it's a way that we need to think, because we're no longer just hunting, fishing, and farming in our locality, right? It's not the way of our society anymore. We've grown huge leaps and bounds, right? That what we do.
We are, by the way, drinking our water out of recycled glass. Glasses made out of recycled glass in Spain.
Oh, okay.
Very nice.
That I bought today at Target, speaking about a globally world, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Okay, so I have one more question. We kind of like followed the path of like how nature entered your work and how the Everglades played an important role in that. The other thing that I was really interested in is why glass? Well, you explained the kind of gritty street rat that you said that liked, being dirty and being a sculpture is like, but there's plaster, there is like all kinds of
Metal,
other materials that are
wood.
probably dirtier than glass even. Why glass? How did you end up with glass?
How did I end up with glass? So when I was in 5th grade, at the end of the school year, instead of having classes, what my school did was each professor or teacher or whatever would choose something that they were interested in or knew how to do outside of the subject matter that they taught. And there was this teacher, I think she taught some kind of science, and she apparently knew how to do stained glass. So she taught this like class on stained glass. And so I made, of course, a stained glass rainbow, which I still have because I gave it to my mom.
Wow.
So it's in storage, like not in Philly, but I have it. And then I made this like weird sort of almost Kilroy was here face thing, which I gave to my dad, which he of course lost. But they had it for a long time. So I made those two things, and that kind of stuck with me. And then I was in a video class, and I shot a video, and one of the things I did when shooting the video, because I decided, I don't even remember why I decided it was about trash in and around my environment. And one of the things, I went to this major monument in my neighborhood, and there was these asphalt tiles that were in front of it, and I laid down on the ground and I panned the ground, and you could see all the glittering from the glass. So that's like a common, because when I was a kid, right, I was born in 1970, so when I was a kid, like, you didn't go to the store and get a plastic bottled beverage. It was all glass. So there was like a lot more glass trash everywhere, right? I just think every time you see a plastic bottle somewhere, for me that was glass, right? And so it was like running around barefoot as a kid in the neighborhoods, like, it was not uncommon to get like cut on a piece of glass on your foot, right? Or walk into when we went to Breezy Point, I remember as a school trip, this kid walked into the water and he got this horrible gash on his foot because he stepped on a piece of glass. Like, now it's just plastic, right? But so it's a totally different like reality. But then when I was a senior, they offered this program where you could drop all your classes except for an AP class and keep any classes that you wanted to. So, and do an independent study. So I decided, I remembered that class. I had a really good time. I made a rainbow.
That's incredible. And you were 11, right?
Whatever 5th grade is.
That's,
11,
I think it's
totally.
11. Yeah, I never know. I have to calculate, but yeah.
Yeah, so I made that rainbow, and it was successful. It arched, right? So
Incredible.
incredible.
I wouldn't know how to do that.
I don't know. She was a great teacher, innate ability. Who knows what it was, And so, because I don't even remember what other people did. If other people had more or less failure or whatever.
But you turned the material that was hurting you and other kids, and making them really suffer into a rainbow. That's pretty
I know.
That's a metaphor right there.
Yeah, I know. We're going to turn it around. So I got actually voted most optimistic when I was in high school, which is hilarious.
Which we totally understand, right?
It makes so much sense. It really does.
Failure? I don't know failure. It's an opportunity.
It's all a success.
Yeah.
Right.
So I didn't die. I'm still breathing.
Victory.
Victory. Oh my God. So,
AP class. You said AP class.
so I just thought I wasn't taking any AP classes. I kept my art classes and I kept my Spanish class actually because I really loved my Spanish class. So I did independent study, and I went to the library, and I got books at the public library on stained glass, and I realized like you needed all this like equipment and things like that, and I was like, I don't have the money for that, you know. And but the maintenance man at my school like gave me let me use his soldering gun, which is great because that was expensive. Then there was a stained glass shop supply place in Manhattan that I went into, and they sold scraps by the pound, and I was able to get like some other the other materials, like, you know, the bare bones of materials. And so I started teaching myself stained glass and making some little projects, and
Incredible.
I took some Polaroids of it, and like 2 weeks into it, my friend was like looking through the paper, and he saw a job in the West Village for a job at a production stained glass shop. So I took out my personalized stationery, no joke, with a light green buffalo thin marker, and I wrote a letter to them because that's how you applied for jobs then, or called, whatever. So but they wanted a letter, so I wrote a letter explaining myself, and I mailed it to them, and they called me, and I went for an interview with my Polaroid pictures from my stained glass, like in the window of my apartment, right, that I was living with my mom, and I go in for this interview, and they hired me for $5 an hour cash, which, you know, this is 1989, and so that was a lot of money, you know, and they hired me because I had minimal to no experience, so I had no bad habits, so they could just train me.
Yeah.
Right? So
You were a blank canvas.
I was a blank canvas, but I was already interested, and I was already having degrees of success. Like I was making shit.
Yeah.
What's failure? I don't know. I made shit. Success, right? So I was making stuff, and so they hired me. So I sat there, and it was a copper foiling, and they made things like tissue box covers, waste paper baskets. What was it? For some reason, those are the two main things that I remember. But they made other like weird things. All stained glass. And so I should remember more of them because
Waste paper baskets out of glass?
Yeah.
Wow.
There's a taste for everybody.
Yeah, exactly. Tissue box covers.
Beautiful.
Tissue box covers, right? So I had to, at one point I had to patina and clean and patina all of them, so I should remember what everything was, but I only remember those two things. But so I would go in after school, so I would bike from Brooklyn over the Brooklyn Bridge into the West Village. I would I'd work after school, and I would copper foil, which is wrapping like foil tape around the edges of stained glass. And I would do that, just, you know, there would be stacks and stacks and stacks of stuff, and so I would just sit there and I would foil away. And so I worked in this tiny little shop that had this like big front window. And back then, the West Village, it was like Gansevoort and Little West 12th Street, and that was literally the meatpacking factory district. So in the summer, it smelled really bad.
Oh my God.
And there was lots of trannies and hookers that would walk by. And every once in a while, we'd get like a prostitute that would stand in front of the shop, do various calisthenics, get picked up, come back an hour later with a bag of groceries, do more calisthenics, get picked up again. We wouldn't see it for the rest of the day. But it was just like kind of crazy, very colorful. And Florent, which is a French restaurant, was right down the street, which is probably still there and was really good. So I worked there, and then I started soldering, and then in the summer I worked full-time, 40 hours a week soldering. And the guy next to me would like solder. He was like a drummer, and he would do this job, and then he would sit there and he would use the solder and make these weird little animals, you know, or like have the drum solo interlude, you know, kind of thing. This other guy was like this tall, skinny guy, like sort of big frizzy hair, Fu Manchu mustache, beard, plaid shirt tucked into his high jeans with a belt on and cowboy boots and like rings. And then he would like get up and decide to make fun of like one of the trannies walk by, and he would just like strut his stuff with his like tiny little narrow hips with his big flowing hair, and just put his hands on his hips, and he was like hilarious. It was just the funny, and like the owner, there was two brothers that ran the place, and the owner lived in the basement. There was not a shower. That was not a legit place to live. It was just this tiny little bathroom, and he was so bizarre. And then they would pay me like for breaks to go to the other side of the village to get a wiffle ball and bat so we could have a wiffle ball break. And then like Fridays they would buy the first 6-pack of beer. And when it was like the greatest job, you know, it's great.
And these little creatures were made of glass?
No, he would make them out of solder. He would just sit there and solder them together and make it like a creature. But for beef soldering 40 hours a week, and then I went to college and I learned welding. It's like MIG
And you
welding.
went to art school right away?
I went to Bennington College for art. So I don't remember them giving out BFA degrees. It's just a BA degree from what I recall. But I went to...
But you knew you wanted to be an artist, and you knew you wanted to
Actually, I went to school and I wanted to do creative writing and animation.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And I got there and I took a creative writing class. The very first day I sat there, and it wasn't just freshmen, it was like all people. And I got super intimidated and I dropped right away because I did not feel smart enough. And the one professor that knew animation only worked with people individually, and he was older, and he was just like, I'm not doing that anymore. And I couldn't get access to anything, and I was like, bogus. So I started doing the art classes. And so I did sculpture and printmaking and ceramics and painting, and I was going to be a painting major with like a sculpting minor, or painting. You had to choose to major in something. You actually chose a 2D and a 3D. So I was going to do painting, and I wasn't sure what the... Oh no, you had to do two areas of study in your art. Your major would be anything. It would be like painting and printmaking, or painting and ceramics, or sculpture, and like you had two different areas that you worked in, and then you had a minor, and my minor was Spanish, and so I took different classes. I was going to focus in painting. I had Sidney Tillman was my painting instructor. My first critique with him, he made me cry horribly.
So he broke you?
I was just like, he wouldn't give me, he said, your painting style is inconsistent. And I was like, it looks completely consistent to me. And he couldn't explain to me how it wasn't consistent, and he was kind of mean.
What did you paint?
I painted a portrait of my mom, so it was like, of course, like,
Such a personal
personal thing. And so, I was like, it's all black and white, and it's all sort of geometric. How is this not consistent? I don't understand. And like, he couldn't explain it, and I couldn't see it. So it was kind of a combination of both. I mean, he painted with paper towels. So like, let's just start with that.
He was in a different continuum.
He was a totally different continuum. So I was doing that, and then I took a sculpture class, and Rudy Serra, Richard Serra's brother, was my instructor.
Really?
So cool.
Yeah, and I connected with him unlike any professor that I connected with. He pushed, he challenged, he demonstrated, and then he's like, now do it. And he gave like, we had to research artists, and we had to like make this work, and I just felt like, wow, this is where it's at. And at critiques, he would always be like, this is really great. It looks so much better if it was really big. And I was like, okay, we're not your brother, and have a budget. And or whatever, it's just like, it would always be funny because he would say that quite a lot, so it was like sort of hilarious, but it's nice. I mean, actually, I say it now sometimes to my students. Go big. Well, I'll just look at it and I'll just be like, this is great, but if this was huge, it'd be like awesome, but like, so I get it now. So it's really funny. But yeah, I really connected with him. I felt like he was present, and he was there, and he was he was present for me, and I didn't feel like I felt like a lot of my other professors, to some degree or another, were kind of phoning it in. Now at Bennington, a lot of the professors were also kind of well known and making in New York City, so they were there Monday through Wednesday, and then they were gone. And there was like a tech in the sculpture area, but there was really no one in any of the other areas. So if you had a problem on Thursday or Friday or over the weekend, you were shit out of luck, right? And so I was super pissed about that. But when he was there, I just felt like he was really, I felt like I was talking to a person who was actually looking at me, not just my face, but like.
Okay, so we'd love to give you the opportunity and platform to open up and discuss what you're most excited about next, whether it's a project, maybe a life goal, maybe a new direction you might be going in. What has you going right now, like exciting?
So I just finished a solo show, and I had quite a few people come, and there's one person who I frequently have come to things and give me feedback that's like critical feedback that pushes me a little bit, that I find really helpful, and that's hard to find outside of school. So that's.
I just want to say the solo show was at the University of Miami Gallery in Wynwood.
Yes.
And the title was
We Are Here.
We Are Here.
Yeah. So, and that was all about sort of the South Florida ecology and where we are present. And I decided last year I had my first solo show, and I did this then, and I did it again. And I think I'm pretty firm that this is going to be sort of a consistent thing whenever I have a solo show, to always have a panel talk midway through the show, because it's a way where I can bring in the collaborators, the people that I go to for research, and to bring awareness to the subject or topic of what I'm working on. And for me, it's a way of giving back and saying thanks to the people that helped me, but also to sort of spread the gospel, the word, the ideas, the concepts, the thoughts, the actions. Like a lot of what I do, I want people to kind of think about the concept of change, right? We started out talking about change, and so I want people to either change, maybe to think about themselves or how they move through the world or how they interact, or consideration for the environment or whatever it happens to be, So I wouldn't necessarily say that like, am I becoming this like ecological artist, right? I'm like, no, I'm a community artist, and the ecology is definitely a part of our community, right? Will that potentially shift or redirect to other subjects? Most probably at some point. Right now, I feel like I have a lot of ideas and projects and things that I still haven't come to fruition that I want to develop. But with that show sort of folding up, my friend who gives me great feedback suggested that I finish up a couple of the projects that he saw me working on initially, that were more about like sort of where I was coming from initially. What does what I feel like look like, or how do I perceive the outer self and how it's perceived by others, and sort of those kind of concepts. And so I have a couple pieces that I'll probably be finishing up on because they've been sitting around forever. So sometimes you abandon projects, and I think these are actually worth finishing. But I just actually recently got a commission. Somebody saw some of my older work, and they, not even that old, from like 2009, and they asked if I could make that piece for their office in New York City.
Congratulations, that's exciting.
Yeah, that's
And the circle comes to a close. Your work goes back to New York City.
Yeah,
Wonderful.
So that's like a big commission that I'm now like, it's getting a little redesigned from the original, because the original one is about being a totally broken half feeling like half a human being but still showing up, and the person that I am now compared to how I was, I feel like I'm in this really positive, emerging, newborn space. And so it's gonna be the same flavor of that, same style, sort of similar style of that other sculpture, but I'm going to make it where I am now psychologically, as opposed to where I was, because it wouldn't make sense. So there's that, and then I have like I'm sort of exploding in the studio that I am in, and I need more space, and I'm thinking of new and different ways how I can expand. I can get my own space, but I really like having a community of other hardworking people who are dedicated to their practice around me, and I like having people around me with diverse practices. So I wouldn't necessarily want like another person that works the same way that I do. It would be nice if we shared some similar tools, but even if not, it doesn't really matter. To me, it's more about how people are approaching their own work. You know, they're constantly working, questioning, challenging themselves.
Like this energy also.
Yeah, and a certain energy. So I really like that. And plus, sometimes I need help moving things.
Community.
Yeah, community. You know, let's raise a roof.
I always
You
say
know. So there's that, and I also. Because I do find myself a little bit of an anomaly with my particular skill set down here. I really want to set myself up with a space where I can teach some workshops. Because I would love to share the technical knowledge that I have with other people who are interested. I found a lot of other artists who are interested in learning some processes in glass, not necessarily because they want to become artists who work predominantly in glass, but because they want to incorporate elements,
certainly,
you know, or gather that knowledge and then translate it into what it is that they do, which I do all the time. So I really like that idea, and that it might enable them to get them to the place where they can then fabricate some component they're going to incorporate their work, or they have a greater understanding, and then we collaborate on something together, you know, because I have like a more advanced skill set, so I can work with them, or I might be the hired gun, so to speak, you know, to fabricate something. So the idea of like being able to work with other people to help them like expand their work in a different way, or bring like use the material significance. You know, glass is both fragile and strong, right? It has these translucent and transparent qualities to it that like other materials don't necessarily. I mean, yeah, you could say resin, but you know, resin definitely has a very different feel to it than glass does. Right? You know, there's so if people want to bring the material significance of glass into their work because it helps make their concept stronger, you know, and I can help facilitate that, that's great, right? And then that just connects me to other people to create this harmonious environment. We're all working together to raise each other up, and I think that is actually great. I was talking with another artist recently about like what does happiness mean, and we were talking about happiness is just really about your connections and your interactions with the people around you, whether it's your family or your friends. And the more positive, and it's not necessarily you need to have this one beautiful thing with this one person, but it's about all the people in your environment, all your friends, your colleagues, the person at the store. Like if you have these constant like good positive interactions with all the people that you pass, you live a happier life. So if you treat other people with like loving kindness, you know, it reciprocates. You know.
We now have a very special treat for you, kind of like a surprise.
Our final question.
It's almost cookies. Our final question.
Go ahead, I'll let you have this one, Morgan.
Really?
Yes.
So you didn't know that, but for the past hour or so, you were actually sitting on a magical rocking chair, and it grants you 3 wishes after going through this ordeal of the rocking chair session. So what are your 3 wishes?
If you were to be granted any 3 wishes.
What?
3. You have 3 wishes.
She's shocked that she's sitting in a magical chair. If
3 wishes. You can wish for anything you want. What would it be?
A massage at a convenient time for me.
Yes.
Okay, 1.
Is that weird?
It's gonna happen. It's gonna happen.
You know, because I can't do it between like normal office hours.
It makes perfect sense.
Okay. And I really want it.
I think that makes so much sense. Yeah.
That's just been on my brain lately. Jeez.
You're down to 2.
I know, this is tough. I'm sorry.
Choose wisely. Choose wisely.
that everyone that hears this should say something randomly nice to a total stranger.
Nice. You're beautiful, Maria Teresa, but you're not a random stranger.
Doesn't count.
And you're funny, Jenna. I like you a lot.
Well, I like cookies a lot.
So you would wish for cookies. And I will get you cookies after we're done with the rocking chair sessions, because we have access to some.
That is so true. That is so true.
I like crunchy cookies in
It
particular.
is kind of sort of crunchy.
But not
Wish number
stale.
3, but not steel. Wish number 3 shall be happening very shortly.
This is gonna happen so soon. You will, the rocking chair delivers right away, right?
Yeah, I guess that's
wonderful.
that's a hard question.
Those are really good. Those
I'm
are
glad
really good
that'll be our
answers.
closing
A
question
massage.
from now. Massage.
Then the good.
A nice, friendly thing to a random stranger.
Exactly, for our listeners,
For our listeners.
and then some cookies.
And some cookies.
Wonderful. It was great having
Thank you so
Jenna.
much for
Thank you.
participating.
For our
and saying
volume
yes.
1 of the rocking chair sessions. I had a great time with
Starting
you.
us off, thank you, Miss Maria Teresa, for having me as well and for being our collaborative duo for the rocking chair sessions. And Jenna, for taking your time to come out here and talk to us.
Yeah.
My pleasure.
Thanks
I hope
so
I did a
much.
good job.
You did an awesome job. You were nothing but success. No failures here.
I know the terrible thing is I'm super hypercritical, so I'm gonna think about this for like re-edit.
And you can listen to it over and over.
Over and over again. Yes. If anything, we'll have a retrospective interview with you several years down the line.
Okay. That's
And
the
you're
only
gonna
time I'll
dissect
listen to
this
it.
one.
And we'll dissect this one.
That's the only time that I'll listen to this one.
A little thank you to all the listeners, and I hope you'll be back for our volume 2 that will be coming up soon. Alrighty, stay tuned. Bye.
Bye.
Ciao.